Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll be your astrologer this month, and this is going to be your overview for the astrology of October 2025. Now, I hope you guys like this content. Make sure you consider giving me a thumbs up if you do. Leave me a comment below and let me know how you guys are feeling with this month's energies. And make sure you click that bell button and subscribe so you can follow along throughout the month. Catch all of my videos like the horoscopes, the new and the full moon, and the retrograde videos along the way. I'm excited to be back. I feel like I haven't done a monthly in a little bit. Things have been kind of crazy with some of the transits. So I'm thrilled to be kind of doing a deep dive into the general collective astrology in the month of October. Now, if you guys are new here, definitely subscribe. It helps the channel grow, and you guys can kind of catch some of the other videos that we do throughout the week. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday using tarot and astrology to try to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. And obviously, like I said, if it resonates, drop me a comment below and let me know how you're feeling. So that way we can kind of stay in the loop with each other and see how some of these transits and the predictions are kind of lining up for you. Now, we do have the October 2025 horoscopes for the 12 rising signs that are out. I put that out a couple weeks ago, so if you guys haven't seen that, check it out, especially if you want a more personalized kind of view on what's happening in the month of October for your rising sun or moon sign. And I'm working on tarot scopes for you guys for October that should be out on Thursday. But today we're talking all things astrology in October of 2025. So this is post eclipses. We're still feeling some of the effects of the eclipses. That's likely going to roll for the next couple of weeks and months, depending on if you have any personal planets that are in, the mutable signs just in general. But this month is an intriguing mix of kind of introspection and also, I think, better relational harmony. We're also going to see lots of transformative punches taking place this month. So overall, October to me feels kind of like a bridge between the shadowy depths of, what we dealt with last month and kind of shifting into the lighter side of the astrology of 2025. I do look forward to the more collaborative energies that we're going to see in Libra season. And obviously we'll see a shift from Libra to Scorpio season. So that's going to be all about rebirth as well as empowerment. That will be lingering in the air. So think of this month as like a time to really lock in when it comes to your intentions, especially around the topics of relationships, communication, and personal growth. I think those are going to be the major headlines. Now, Venus is going to start the month in Virgo, so she's actually still moving through a sign where she's in her fall. So we can feel a little bit nitpicky still when it comes to relationships, or maybe feeling unfulfilled, or that there can be like a sense of having some restrictions that are kind of coming up in love, in values. She will also conjunct the South Node very early on. So this is going to be inviting all of us to kind of reassess old karmic relationship patterns, especially when it comes to service or when it comes to relationships with people at work. We might notice that some perfectionist kind of tendencies are coming up. And we can be a little bit harder on ourselves when it comes to our self-worth. So you guys want to just kind of keep that in mind. Be nice to yourselves and to those of you guys who you're partnering with. But then right before she leaves Virgo, she's actually going to make a pretty intense opposition to Saturn in Pisces. And that'll happen the second week of the month. And that's kind of like mirroring or almost like echoing some of the themes that we've seen with this most recent solar eclipse in Virgo, which was also in opposition to Saturn. So many of us feel like there has been some invisible kind of blockages or limitations or just feeling exhausted. So watch for that opposition. It can definitely bring up some feelings of limitations or reality checks when it comes to partnerships or our finances. But then thankfully, Venus is going to shift signs. She's going to go into obviously Libra, and that's her home sign, and she'll be there mid-month. And it's going to be a nice trine that we're going to see between Venus in Libra and Uranus in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius. A grand air trine makes for grand opportunities in social stuff, in kind of networking, as well as new relationship opportunities. And this is going to add some layers of the transformative empowerment when we see Uranus and Pluto linking up with Venus. I'm anticipating some innovative breakthroughs in connections for everybody. So you want to kind of lean into that wherever the air signs are in your chart. And then from there, she's going to eventually move into a square with Jupiter in Cancer that will kind of bleed into early November. And we know that that can be too much of a good thing. That can also be a little bit more overdoing it or being overly optimistic when it comes to home and family dynamics with Jupiter in Cancer. Now, for the most part, though, when we think about Jupiter, we think about Venus. These are the two benefics in astrology. These are the feel-good planets. So being that they're going to be in strong positions, in some ways it is inviting in more abundance or more harmony and opportunities to really nurture some of our closest connections. Now, overlapping with that, we're going to see that we will have a Mercury-Mars conjunction that's going to be taking place in Scorpio around the 20th. So, that's coinciding with the very beginning of the Mercury retrograde shadow period. So Mercury will be entering in the shadow period in Scorpio. It won't retrograde until around mid-November, and it'll start as retrograde in Sag. So I'll be talking about that at some point later in the month, but that retrograde also is going to start with a conjunction to Mars. This tells me that we're going to see in the month of October that there is going to be intensity revolving around our drive and our words and actions. And this is perfect for, I think, cutting through, illusions or kind of getting to the truth of the matter. But it can also mean that some of us are going to have some sharp tongues, and we're going to have to be reviewing some of the things that we may say later on in November. So really the vibe about October, I think, is about shedding or continuing to kind of shed things that don't serve us, embracing authenticity in relationships, as well as kind of stepping into our own personal power with a blend of depth and obviously some Libra grace. So I'm going to break it all down for you guys, transit by transit. We're going to talk a little bit about what these transits mean and how we can kind of work with them intentionally. But something that I started doing during my general kind of monthly overviews is I started pulling a 3-card spread just to get some energy on what we can be expecting collectively and how that might actually correlate to some of the astrological themes. So I pulled 3 cards. The first card that I got was actually the 5 of Coins reversed. Okay, so, with that card coming up first, obviously this is kind of like, I think, the foundation of what we've been dealing with in September. And this is about kind of emerging from hardship, right? Being left out in the cold. So in the upright position, the 5 of Coins or Pentacles can symbolize financial struggles, isolation, health issues, and leave us, kind of feeling like we're holding the bag, physically or emotionally. So maybe we are kind of bouncing back from September's kind of, chaos with the eclipses. We've seen some economic downturns. Obviously, a lot of people have been talking about personal losses or societal divides, lots of job changes, and some financial kind of challenges. So I think it's nice to see in the reverse position that it's saying that, it's signaling we're at a turning point now. And this is a point of bringing in recovery or hope, and obviously an end to some of the tough times that we have been dealing with since last month. So collectively here in October 2025, it does indicate that there is ongoing challenges like economic instability and other effects that have been kind of happening from, challenges at work or relationships, and we're moving on from that, and it's going to start to kind of ease up. Now, people might also start finding support systems that they have overlooked before with this reversed. So perhaps there's going to be community kind of connections, there's going to be policy shifts and innovative solutions that are going to kind of be coming up as a result of some of those problems. But overall, this is a card that is a message of resilience. And, when we look at this, we see 2 people that are kind of out in the cold in the winter. And it can be kind of saying now we're starting to kind of thaw or defrost. So we're, finally kind of opening up to healing issues. Maybe we're going to be seeing that some of us are tending to our finances better, our health, and even our mental health a little bit better. We just need some support. And this is about kind of actively seeking help rather than staying in victim mode. Now, this is very significant because this month we are going to see Neptune retrograde back into Pisces, and Saturn and Neptune will be there. So victim mentality will be alive and well. We are going to see that for the next couple of months as both of those planets kind of wrap up their tour in Pisces, the final sign of the Zodiac. On the second card that I got, which is the kind of right now we're going to be kind of dealing with in October, I got the 3 of Cups. So it's a stark contrast from the 5 of Coins. I see this as, the core energy for the second card is like celebration and connection. And I think that this is very much kind of tied to the Uranus, Pluto, Venus trine, We even saw this in late September. The sun was making a similar trine to both Uranus and Pluto. And the air signs are social. So whether it's parties, connections, invitations, planning, networking events, meeting people, focusing on relationships, I think that that's going to be a huge theme. And obviously we're in Libra season, so you're going to see that, especially with a full moon in opposition to the sun in Libra, where we're going to see the highlights of who we are individually compared to our relationships. And then a new moon in Libra, which is going to be emphasizing new relationship goal setting. So I'm expecting with this card coming up that it's actually saying, hey, there's going to be opportunities for joy. We're going to see better friendship and opportunities for kind of like harmonious gatherings. It can also represent emotional fulfillment that comes through relationships or collaborations or shared success. So this can often be an indication that we're going to see parties, reunions, celebrations, creative kind of partnerships that are emerging. And I think in the context of October 2025, the collective energy is shifting towards unity and support within networks. And that's what we see through the trine. That's all free flowing. Now, after the reversal of the hardship that we saw with the Five of Pentacles reversed, this card suggests that there is a wave of social bonding that's going to be taking place this month. And I think that's really beneficial. So whether that's like global events, festivals, or movements that are bringing people together, this is going to be about fostering empathy and some kind of collective collaboration or creativity that's going to be emerging. So think of it as strengthened alliances that can be happening in your own life. We could see that out in the world in terms of like diplomacy or politics, cultural exchanges, or community-driven initiatives. Now, romantically or personally, it's also hinting at deeper connections. And this is also about, them forming amid some of the recovery that we're still going through. So the vibe is very uplifting. It does talk about abundance kind of flowing, where we celebrate our wins with other people. Just watch for overindulgence and some social excess that can definitely happen. I'm linking that maybe to the Venus, square Jupiter that we'll see kind of at the end of the month. Now, the final card that I got was the Sun card, and it was also upright, which is very positive. This is a major arcana card, so I love to see this. And this is one of the most positive cards in the whole, deck of tarot. So the sun really embodies success, clarity, happiness, enlightenment. It is the promise of growth and vitality. And also it's about kind of having this childlike wonder. So it does indicate that achievements and positive resolutions are likely going to be coming as a result of what we do in October. So we might start to see that at the end of the month or kind of getting into November. Now, collectively, this culminates, the reading with a burst of optimism. It's also about a major breakthrough of some kind that we might be having. It can also speak to breakthroughs in science, breakthroughs in energy, and, possibly even global peace efforts that can shine through. Personally, this can really be about increased confidence and health improvements. And it's kind of seen as like the golden age after, some of the shadows that we've been experiencing since last month. And it does talk about the truth prevailing, and it's also about illusions that are dissipating and like prosperity that can arrive. So perhaps this is like through, wherever the sun is kind of going through in your chart. So look at Libra, look at Scorpio. I would also maybe even look at Leo, or where the new moon is going to be taking place in Libra. You might see some kind of boost in those areas. But all in all, this is a reminder to really embrace positivity, as this energy from the sun card is going to be kind of amplifying whatever it is that we're focusing on this month. So overall, I look at this and I'm like, wow, it's really from shadow to sunshine. And the sun's going to start to kind of come out, and it's a very transformative month, I think, moving from this reverse Five of Pentacles into the communal wealth of the Three of Cups, and then completing with the sun's kind of triumphant glow. So I think it's about overcoming isolation through connection. I think that's so much of the themes, especially as we have seen with planets moving through Libra, having come into opposition with both Saturn when it was in Aries, and now Neptune that's finishing up with 2 in Aries, where 2 is actually stronger than 1. I also feel like this is, great because globally we might see some resolutions to economic or social tension. So we could see some stabilized markets. We could see some diplomatic wins. And there's obviously this emphasis on collaboration. So working together, obviously, I think is going to be the key. Yes, the challenges won't vanish overnight. The Five of Pentacles is still coming up, but there's momentum towards healing and abundance. And I feel like if we lean into relationships this month, if we stay open to opportunities and collaboration, and we try to be optimistic, this is actually going to improve all of the results of our actions. So with that being said, let's go transit by transit. As a reminder, you guys can find this down below. So if you click the details in the description, you're going to find all of the dates for the transits that I'm going to be talking about today. I'm here in Central Texas, so I am looking at the transits from the perspective of North America on Central Time. I know we have some people that are going to be all over the world, so you might have to adjust some of these things depending on where your time zone is and where you guys are located. But basically, October, it starts off right at the very beginning of the month with quite a significant square. We are going to see Mercury in Libra coming into a square with Jupiter in Cancer. And Mercury we always want to watch because it is directly connected to the South Node. So there's always this aspect of clearing out, dealing with the past, releasing something, or something kind of coming back up that we need to deal with. So Mercury Libra, this is a sign that's all about communication and connection with other people, right? And then Mercury is also very much the same. It can be about business, travel, transactions. So when we look at Mercury in Libra, this is about being more diplomatic and seeing balance in our conversations and ideas. But with a square, it's going to kind of bring up this kind of expansive energy where it can kind of feel like mental overload. So too much information coming in at one time. There might be tension between overthinking fairness and kind of getting lost in, family drama or emotional exaggeration with Jupiter in Cancer. I believe this could manifest as being optimistic about plans, but they feel a tad bit unrealistic. Maybe some of us are going to be feeling at the beginning of the month that we've been idealizing a relationship or a home situation, and this is really leading us maybe to feeling a little scattered when it comes to our focus. And it can also distract us and pull us in multiple directions at one time, especially if you happen to have anything between 20 and let's say like 23 degrees of the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn. This also gets exaggerated with the incoming square from the moon in Capricorn. So you're actually going to see a grand cardinal cross that's going to be happening at the beginning of October. We're going to go, I have so much stuff that I have to get done. And my advice is to kind of, work with this energy because we're going to get pulled in different directions, is ground yourself out if you can. Go for a walk, get in nature. Maybe consider doing some journaling or, talking something out with a partner or with a family to kind of find the balance. We really want to use Libra's kind of air to kind of weigh the pros and cons of situations, but also tap into, Jupiter's intuition to avoid overcommitting to things. I call these, kind of growing pains when we see planets that are kind of squaring Jupiter on the right-hand side. It's like if we really think that we're optimistic and we can achieve something, if we believe in something, then what actions are we doing? But more importantly, where are we trying to kind of partner or work with other people and be a team player to see some of these things come to fruition? So, I think that I would really be focusing on, kind of balancing your thoughts with heartfelt wisdom and, setting a thoughtful tone for the month ahead right at the beginning of the month. Now, this will then take us to the 4th of October. And on the 4th, we're going to see that Venus will conjunct the South Node in Virgo. Not a fan of this one. Not a fan of this one for a million reasons, but I think really what gets me is Venus's, kind of debilitation here. Obviously, she's in her fall. It's the South Node, so we're dealing with the past. It's at 18 degrees, so it does talk specifically about health challenges, health issues. Things that are dysfunctional or not working when it comes to our health habits, our job, even our relationships, because Venus does deal with money, values, and pleasure. So not my favorite day, especially for anything aesthetic or cosmetic or anything that deals with serious relationship commitments. And I feel like with this conjunction, it's really bringing up karmic themes to the forefront, especially around Venus topics. So love, relationships, value, even self-care routines. And the South Node represents past patterns and what we've been releasing. So now that we're coming out of this eclipse season, we've seen a lot of planets dance on the South Node, Mercury, Mars, the Sun, and this is the final one to come into conjunction. So you might want to look back over the last 2 months when we had other conjunctions around this 18 degrees. It is really inviting us to release outdated habits. Okay, so I use the term perfectionism a lot, but it can also mean that maybe we're being overly self-critical. Maybe we're being overly critical in relationships. Maybe we've been undervaluing our worth through excessive service to other people. A lot of this is like where we can actually get run down, or we can have problems health-wise or job-wise because we're just giving too much to others. So it might feel a little bittersweet for some people, and old wounds or familiar comforts can surface for healing. And this can potentially trigger like reflections on, codependency or unrealistic standards in relationships. Now, this conjunction is a powerful moment for closure. So this is all about clearing space for healthier dynamics. I think to best work with it, I would engage in like release rituals, like writing letters to your past self, or maybe decluttering items that you have from old loved ones. Maybe meditate on forgiveness and self-compassion, because this transit is really deepening the month's themes of kind of shedding any relational baggage before we set new tones for relationships on that new moon in Libra at the end of the month. Now then we move to October the 6th. And October the 6th, we're going to see that Mercury is going to ingress into the sign of Scorpio. So it will leave Libra, where it's been the last couple of weeks, and it's going to go into fixed water, obviously a sign ruled by Pluto and Mars. So it is rather intense. This is quite the shift, especially as Mercury is kind of connected to that south node. So with Venus still, somewhat close to the south node, and like Mercury and Venus in mutual reception, they're kind of in each other's signs. This can be saying that there's like critical turning points happening in relationships right off the bat. And as we see Mercury go into Libra, it's going to go into Scorpio. It's starting to form a square to Pluto. So it's like so scorpionic in its kind of ingress. Anyway, Mercury is the messenger. So as Mercury dives into the deeper waters of Scorpio, this is really turning our communication style more into something that's intense, something that's investigative. This is also laser focused on truth and what lies beneath the surface. So I would be expecting conversations to kind of get real. Some people are going to be probing, others' kind of motives. We're going to find that this is all about uncovering secrets. And things like exploring taboo topics like power dynamics or shared resources, taxes, inheritances, and intimacy matters, right? Scorpio is also very psychological. Now, I think that this can bring, cathartic revelations that might be intense at first, and they're necessary to kind of dig into. And we might find that they're coming up because there's something kind of stirring that feels like obsessive or suspicious in some way. But if we listen to our intuition and we kind of tap into that, we could find that there's something that actually needs to be resolved. Now, because Scorpio is a fixed water sign, thoughts can be more fixated, right? They can be more kind of stubborn as well. And this can be positive in a sense where if you're really determined to get something done, or if you're studying or you're making, travel plans, it can be good for that in some regards. But I would say watch out for the shadow side of this, where we can see manipulative words, or, people who are being intense, or kind of playing power struggles with other people. And I would really focus on, embracing the detective mode of Mercury and Scorpio for personal growth. So for some people, it can mean therapy sessions, or, diving deep into research. But practice objectively if you can, and meditate to create mental space and kind of clarity, because this transit's going to be amping up the month's themes of like empowerment through truth. Now, also on the 6th, we're going to see, depending on where you are, what time zone you're in, so definitely check your time zones. But we're going to be having a full moon that's going to be happening in the sign of Aries. Now, it looks like that full moon is going to be taking place around 14 degrees. So if you have anything around 12 to 16 degrees of Aries, sun, moon, rising, or personal planet, this is going to be impacting you pretty significantly. I think I just put a video out on this so you guys can check it out. And this is an intense one for a lot of reasons. Primarily, I think that this is a closing full moon that was really seated under a solar eclipse that we had earlier this year in Aries season. It was right around, I believe, like 9 degrees of Aries. So over the last 6 months, this has been building towards this kind of culmination period. Since then, we have had the Saturn-Neptune ingress into Aries. We have also had Chiron continue to go through Aries. We have also had a Mercury and a Venus retrograde in Aries earlier in the spring. So the area of Aries in our chart has definitely been under construction for some time. Now, whenever we have a full moons are highly emotional because it's kind of representing the polarity between the sun in one sign, the moon in another, and the sun is kind of highlighting some of the emotional themes on that Aries moon. So Aries, obviously the first sign of the zodiac, cardinal fire, ruled by Mars. It's going to be really illuminating, themes revolving around independence, the self, our bold desires, our intense emotions. And it means that this is going to act as like a really potent, like a release point for anything that's been blocking our authenticity. So old identities, old fears, old patterns that keep you from stepping into this kind of more warrior energy, I think is going to come up. Every time we see a Aries full moon, there's always this tension that arises between me, Aries, versus we, and that's the sun in Libra. And I think that with that opposition, it's really highlighting relationship dynamics. So for some, this can feel very empowering, like there is like a breakthrough in personal willpower, or fiery, if unresolved anger and frustration or secrets are bubbling up. And I say that because the ruler of this particular moon is Mars, and not only does it in conjunct or quincunx Mars, but now Mars is actually moving through one of its home signs. It's the ruler, obviously, of Aries, but it's also connected to Scorpio. And Aries is more about kind of, direct conflict and handling things head on, right? It's the ram, and it wants to react to things, or it wants to defend. Scorpio energy is very different. It's very art of war, it like strategizes and it thinks long and hard about how it's going to handle or transform or attack a situation. So to have, Mars, the ruler, in its home sign in conjunct or quincunx, or essentially I would say invisible, it's 8 houses away from the moon, is rather intense. And it means that there is going to be a need for a lot of people collectively to take a good hard look at who we are, behind the scenes. This is a really good time for shadow work. This is a good time for emotional or psychological healing, dealing with trauma, dealing with grief, dealing with loss. As well as kind of keeping an eye on where our finances are, who or what we are investing our time or energy in, emotionally as well, because Mars is obviously in a water sign. So I think for many of us, to work with, this full moon, I wouldn't just look at where Aries is. I would also look at where Scorpio is. And that's the same area where we're going to see the Mercury-Mars conjunction. That's the same place where Mercury is going to retrograde back to next month. So I'll be keeping an eye on the kind of Scorpio transits because I think they're rather significant. Aries full moons can serve as like a really defining moment in terms of realizing what we want personally. And I think with this full moon, it's about, well, what do we want and what are we willing to change? What are we willing to transform? Okay, so I think there's going to be a need to do shadow work, and a need to also be a little bit more vulnerable and transparent. And this can definitely be a time where like secrets are kind of like spilling out with some of the aspects, Mercury square Pluto and so on. Anyway, I like for Aries full moons doing fire rituals. I like to write down what I want to release on a piece of paper, and I like to safely burn it. Obviously, we want to channel that Aries kind of courage into self-care actions. So it could be, new fitness routines, new personal goals, kind of reinvention of our style. But I think that a lot of things that we're changing starts on the inside and it kind of reverberates outward. And those of you guys who have significant Aries placements, you might be seeing some big changes happening around the time of this full moon. Obviously, this is a full moon that's really going to be really, I think, lending energy to, self-leadership, being independent, being fierce, being courageous, and recognizing and realizing that in order to be able to do these things, we have to kind of combat the shadow in order to get there. Now, on the 8th of October, we're going to be seeing the next transit, and this is going to be where Venus in Virgo is going to be sextiling Jupiter in Cancer. So a minor aspect, but hey, you got to take the wins when you can get them. Venus has not had a lot of support recently, and she is coming into an opposition with Saturn. So Venus sextile Jupiter, we've got the two benefics that are in a kind of Venusian, 60-degree aspect to one another. It basically means that with Venus in Virgo's more practical, service-oriented love, It is working well with the sextile to Jupiter in Cancer. That's more about gentle or emotional or intuitive expansion. So personally, I feel like this is going to give us some opportunities for nurturing relationships through, kind acts of service, perhaps improving our home life or our emotional bonds with like practical gestures. I think it's a feel-good aspect. It does soften, some of the earlier tension that we've had, and it is inviting abundance in family matters or self-care routines. For those of you guys who want to get your house organized and kind of in order or cleaned up or improved, it's great. It's also great for those of you guys who have home offices, or maybe you are trying to improve relationship that you have with people who work for you. Particularly, I think of like people who work in the home. So if you have a personal assistant, if you have childcare, if you've got, people who train pets or people who design or fix your home, it can be beneficial for that. And I also like the fact that, it's going to be bringing, I think, upgrades or kind of more heartfelt connections that feel more supportive and lucky, especially when Jupiter and Venus kind of link up. So to work with this aspect, I would plan like nurturing activities, like cooking a meal for a loved one or decluttering your space for better flow. Especially if you guys work from home, this can be a good time to do that as well. And you really want to use this transit to affirm your worthiness of joy. And I think the transit's really hinting at, better relational harmony that's kind of going to be building as we get to later in the month. But what are we willing to do, right, for the things, people, places that we love? And we're going to have to put in a little bit of extra, I think, elbow grease, especially with that sextile. While it's happening, it's also looks like it's going to trine the moon. And obviously, it's going to in conjunct or quincunx Chiron. And I've seen this materialize for like a lot of like partners that are supporting other people's new healthy habits. I've also seen this as people seeking trainers or therapists, or maybe they're working with dietitians or coaches. Venus, in the sixth house, or Venus in Virgo, can be very much kind of talking about, indulging or investing more in people who can help us improve something. And whether that's, our appearance, or if it's just productivity in a nutshell, some of these things are going to be worth kind of investing in. And then we're going to see on the 11th, but I think some of you guys might be feeling this early, but it will be exact on the 11th that Venus is going to come into an opposition with Saturn. So let's look at that. That's going to be earlier in the day. And this is not a fun transit, okay? And this is why I said it was kind of giving me vibes of what happened. Let's see, it's on the 11th. So it's 27. Sorry, guys. There we go. Early in the morning. It's giving me the same vibes that we had during the solar eclipse. Okay. So if you go back to September 21st and you look at that solar eclipse at 29 degrees, it was in opposition to Saturn, and also it was in opposition to Neptune. It's happening again. So this may reactivate, the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, some of the themes from the eclipse as Venus kind of hits that degree. But Saturn is back in Pisces now. Neptune is in the final moments of being in Aries. So you'll kind of see this for a couple of day period. And this is the tension that I was kind of mentioning that is likely going to be coming up in October, because Venus is in her fallness position. So she feels a bit weakened. She's facing off with an opposition through Saturn's kind of restrictive nature. And for some of us, it could feel like periods of isolation. We can feel like there's more criticism, there's more limitations in love or beauty or finances. And it can definitely highlight where relationships feel burdened, or there is some sense of self-doubt that's kind of creeping in. Not the best time to be making, big sacrifices in love or relationships. It's also a time where there could be some harsh reality checks in regards to our employment. It can also be about our health. It can be about our relationship habits. And it looks like that same day, the moon's going to be going through Gemini, and it's going to kind of make a square to Saturn as well as Venus later in the day. So that seems to be rather important. I think it's going to be, connecting to how we communicate our needs, or if we need space, or if we're feeling alienated or rejected, how we share that information and connect. We want to lean into that moon trine the sun and like let other people know what we need rather than kind of isolating ourselves. So I do think that, it'll manifest as reality checks around commitment or self-value, especially if you've been the one who's been over giving in a situation and like too much in service mode. Yes, this is painful, but it is necessary for growth. And I think to work with this, we really want to focus on setting boundaries compassionately and letting other people know like where we're no longer kind of selling ourselves short or settling. Definitely practice anything that's going to be enhancing self-compassion. So I would work with the rose quartz, do any meditations on self-love, focus on releasing restrictions so that way you can really embrace your worth and know that this opposition is kind of echoing what we saw with the solar eclipse in Virgo. And it's also saying we need to kind of take some space in some way, shape, or form or create that boundary so we can really fully embrace, once Venus goes into Libra a couple days later, some of the freedom and the better relationship harmonies that might potentially emerge. Now, on the 13th, we're going to see, there we go. On the 13th, we're going to see Venus's ingress into Libra, and this is going to be probably one of the highlights of the month of October. So let's fast forward to that. And Venus is at home in this sign, okay? She's associated with both Taurus as well as Libra. This is more the relationship, partnership kind of dynamic, coming together as one. And she's home. So, in her domicile, this is where she shines the brightest. This means that love and harmony and aesthetics all get a boost. And relationships can then suddenly feel more balanced and social and also diplomatic. After the Virgo challenges that we have been dealing the last couple of weeks, we're really shifting more into a dynamic where there's more balance with other people. There's going to be better beauty. It's a time for partnerships really to flourish and for us to kind of attract what kind of mirrors us in relationships or partnerships. Now, around this ingress, we're also going to see Venus start coming into a trine with Uranus and Gemini, as well as Pluto and Aquarius. And so this is really significant because she's connecting with outer planets that are in other air signs. So when this happens, there's going to be profound transformation and I think unexpected invitations when it comes to our social connections. So think empowering shifts in social circles, sudden insights where we can have conversations and deepen our bonds, and also kind of liberate ourselves from some of these old patterns in relationship dynamics. Now, obviously, we will start to see as Venus goes through Libra, at some point she's going to start coming into a square with Jupiter. That's really peaking in November. And this is really kind of saying we need to have these conversations now. We need to kind of find our tribe, connect with other people, build together. So that way, as we're coming into some of the Jupiter-Venus squares next month, it's about receiving the support that we need so we can have the expansion in our home or family dynamics. Can also mean that this is about kind of nurturing our connections a little bit more. So what do I like for the Venus ingress and Venus trine Pluto and Uranus? I think this is a wonderful time to either refresh your style. It's also a really good time to host a gathering. Send invitations, plan something, connect with other people. Libra loves elegance. And really focus on fair exchanges and relationships and kind of lean into these trines. If you want bold transformations in, your style, in your values, or even just redefining friendships, because this ingress is really, I think, lightening October's kind of mood, and it's bringing a lot more, of this kind of like relational tone together in a very beautiful way. Now, also on the 13th, what's interesting is that the same day that we see the trine, or within about a day or two, so you'll probably feel this like on the 13th, the 14th, but Pluto's also getting ready to go direct. And so that's pretty significant because Pluto is now coming back online. Now it'll be stationing direct around that 1 degree of Aquarius. So if you have anything about 0 to 3 degrees of Aquarius, Sun, Moon, or Rising, or my Scorpio risings, you guys are going to feel this as well. This is a big one because Pluto has been retrograde. And more of the transformation has been inward. And so now when Pluto goes direct, it means that now it's time to really apply some of these lessons outwardly in the Aquarius area of your chart. So what this means is that the power shift, is taking place in collective or innovative ideas out in the world. So think kind of breaking free from outdated structures in friendships or tech or, society's kind of roles. And this is likely for a lot of people going to feel like we're reclaiming our authenticity in groups. And there can also be major revelations about power dynamics, right? Pluto and Aquarius is humanitarianism. It's things that are kind of out there and unusual or fringe. It can also be things going on with the internet. stuff that's connected to kind of group, thoughts and beliefs and how people are working together to kind of orchestrate some kind of significant change. The list goes on. So it's going to be interesting to see that happen. I think for some of us, it's going to feel like it's like a rebirth period, and we're having to kind of reflect on what interchanges we've been making for the last several months and now really start to integrate them. Community work is great. Shadow work is great. I would also say this is really, in a nutshell, facing fears of change, because now we are ready to kind of start instigating some of that change. I would recommend maybe working with like smoky quartz, carrying some smoky quartz or wearing it. That can be helpful for kind of grounding some of this kind of heavier energy of Pluto. And I think the stationing is really getting us ready for Scorpio season, right? Because Scorpio is associated with Pluto. And it's all going to be about that transformative empowerment that we're going to be kind of building into next month. Now on the 16th of the month, let's move to that. We are going to see the sun in Libra start coming into a square with Jupiter in Cancer. I'm not mad at it. I mean, it's a bit cocky and enthusiastic. Let's see, when is that going to be happening? Right around there. So it's going to be later in the evening on the 16th. And that'll be the sun making a opening square to Jupiter. Venus is connected to the sun. Venus is in Libra, and the moon is connected to Jupiter, and the moon is going through Virgo. So we're actually coming into like a dark moon phase, preparing for what will be the new moon in Libra. But the sun in astrology represents like where we're shining a light on something, or our core kind of self. And the square obviously amplifies tension between harmony and kind of seeking emotional expansion. Very similar to the beginning of the month when Mercury was squaring Jupiter. We're also going to see Venus go through that square as well. Essentially, I think that overall, this is amplifying tensions between, what we're doing in relationships versus what we're doing at home or what we've done in the past. And so there can be some over-optimism that can kind of come up in relationships, or like home life is kind of clashing with the reality of relationships. And it's leading to growth opportunities that we have to find through balance. And I think really it's kind of highlighting like paradoxes, like wanting connection, but feeling kind of pulled away because of family duties or responsibilities. And it's really showing us that we need to avoid overextending ourselves. So to kind of best work with this, I would say kind of recalibrate the best you can. Think a lot about boundaries because they're going to be necessary this month. Definitely plan nurturing activities that honor, both yourself and your home and others. But I think the square is kind of echoing some of like the relational challenges that are kind of coming up this month. And it's going to be probably similar to things that you have been discussing early October. And then, you're getting into the 16th or so, and then the sun comes through, and then you have to actually kind of orchestrate some of that change. It's also going to be in opposition to Chiron. So it's going to be a mutable T-square where there are going to be a lot of emotions that are coming up revolving around, hey, if we want to be in relationships, we want to partner with people, if we want to grow with others, what do we need to work on or heal within ourselves? And all at 24, it means that likely these are going to be things that we're not seeing, we're not aware of. I've observed like that the planets going through Libra already, and some of these squares to Jupiter, oppositions to Chiron, has been things that other people see that we're not aware of. Very Saturn, Neptune, kind of in late Pisces, early Aries, things that we're not, that need to be brought to our attention so that we can better ourselves and then also better our relationships. So that's going to be fun, especially if you have anything around like 23, 24, 25 cardinal, watch for that. All right, and then this is going to take us into the 20th, and this is where you guys really want to pay attention because this gets a little slippery. So on the 20th, we're going to see that Mercury and Mars are going to conjunct each other. All right, and I've talked about this a little bit on the channel, but I think it's actually going to be like really prominent. Like in particular, there's a couple of people's charts I've been looking at. Who was it? There was several. One of them was, who was it? The talk show host who recently got suspended and then he came back. I forget his name, but you guys know what I'm talking about. This is right, I think, around some of his personal planets. And I remember looking at this last month being like, or a couple weeks ago being like, yeah, he's going to come back because the Mercury-Mars conjunction is going to be on either his sun or his Mercury, and then it's going to retrograde back into Scorpio. So I didn't think that there was going to be a cancellation or a suspension for very long. I knew that he would either go to another network or do his own thing, or he would end up coming back, and now he's coming back. But I think that it's still going to be about him. Secondly, I'll have to think about who the other person was, but there was another really prominent thing that was connected to this. I'll put it in the comment section if I remember. But this is when the shadow period is going to begin. So first things first is Mercury and Mars are going to conjunct, and they're going to conjunct at 19 degrees of Scorpio. So if you have anything there, sun, moon, rising, personal planet, pay attention, because this is a fusion of the mind and also action. And obviously it's happening in like a very intense Mars kind of Pluto ruled sign. It's very potent. So what this means is that words can become weapons or wands, depending on how you use them. So it'll provide sharp insights. People will be sparking some very passionate debates. We will see lots of driven pursuits in the name of truth. But, it's happening amongst some other kind of challenging transits that are taking place. Like, we have the Mercury shadow that's happening. It's going to be a dark moon. Mercury rules the south node. So I think that there's some things coming up that make me feel like it can bring us breakthroughs in communication, but there can also be lots of impulsivity, and there can be like arguments that can be had. Now, this is great for research or any kind of like advocacy. And additionally, like I said, this marks the beginning phase of the Mercury retrograde pre-shadow. So Mercury will actually start its retrograde in November in Sagittarius, but it'll come back to Scorpio. And when it starts its retrograde, it'll actually be Mercury and Mars conjunct in Sag. So this feisty, fiery, combative, or passionate energy is going to last for quite some time. Now, I think that because this is kicking off the pre-shadow and it's signaling the up and coming Mercury retrograde, likely many of us are going to start feeling or seeing some of the themes of the review that will be coming up in November early, especially in deep communications or hidden matters. Scorpio is a very private, kind of like passionate behind the scenes sign. And so we can start to kind of see that things are surfacing that need to be revisited in the Scorpio/Sag area of our horoscope. From my perspective, when a Mercury retrograde or when a planetary retrograde starts in one sign and it retrogrades back into another, I look at that as, well, it's got to go back to that sign or that house, and it needs to collect something or it needs to work through something before it can go forward. So even though it starts in Sagittarius, we want to look at what's going on in Scorpio. I think to best work with this energy, your guess is better than mine. I've got this conjunction in my natal chart, and it's definitely, it can burn you if you're not careful. You really want to channel this mental energy into something that's going to be productive. Like, you need an outlet. So, strategizing your goals, focusing on, research, doing something that's going to be physically active can be really good. It's really great for divination or anything kind of connected to forecasting. You're going to see a lot of people that are going to be forecasting war, Mars. You're going to see a lot of people that are going to be forecasting changes in the market, so that there's going to be a market pivot, which we always see with the Mercury retrograde, but especially in Scorpio. Lots of talks around changes revolving around debt, spending, taxes. I think that's going to be kind of coming up generally with the collective. But I would say pause and think before you speak, because knowing that this conjunction is going to happen on the 20th and it's a pre-shadow, it's saying things that we say, threats, arguments, conflicts, any hostility, resentment, anger, particularly in relationships, 19, will come back to kind of bite us in the ass, especially next month when we have the retrograde. Channel this into productive stuff, guys, and really just take a breath. And I think with this pre-shadow, obviously, same usual rules kind of apply. Back up your data. Think twice before you sign any legal contracts. Read the fine print. I do think that this is going to be a lot of kind of globally reassessing what is and is not healthy. And that could be pharmaceuticals, that could be in regards to food, that could be in regards to new information that's coming out that's somehow connected to Scorpio things. So like reproductive organs, the bowels, anything that deals with cancer. We might be hearing some kind of like breakthrough things that are kind of happening connected to like surgical procedures. I just heard one the other day. I guess I heard that China has created this new glue that can be used to kind of go and fix bones that have been broken. So to keep you from having to go in and like either reset it or do surgery on bones, they can actually fuse it together, which is like crazy. And I think that's very much like that breakthrough Mercury Mars changes and transformations in like surgery But also, I think we're going to see a lot of really good investigative journalism over the next 2 months, uncovering scandals and things that are where, there has been some secrets or there's been some threats or some intense stuff that's going on, particularly with people who are in independent media, because Mars is the warrior. They're kind of fierce and on their own, and Mercury is the person who has the microphone, or they're writing the articles, or they're doing the research. So we're going to hear some pretty interesting stuff. So back up all your stuff, read the fine print, definitely look at where Scorpio is in your chart, so that way you're kind of prepared for this wild energy, because this conjunction is adding a little bit more fuel to the fire. And if we're kind of prepared, we're able to kind of clarify our intentions, we can kind of keep from maybe, acting or reacting too quickly or saying things that we don't mean. All right, on the 21st, you're going to have this new moon in Libra. And this will be most significant, obviously, for Libra placements, sun, moon, or rising, anything from, I would say, about 26 degrees to 29 degrees. Even the 0 degrees of the fixed signs are going to kind of feel this one a little bit, because it's right at the end of Libra. And a new moon here obviously symbolizes new opportunities, right? Fresh starts. Libra is all about seeking balance in partnerships. It's also about finding like self-harmony. So when we have a new moon, this is about intentions connecting to equality, beauty, and collaboration all start to kind of take root. Potentially, this is about resetting relational patterns as well. So if there's been some turbulence in October, you can kind of regroup and you can connect with another person. I think now more than ever, I have heard so many more partnerships, business partnerships, couples, family members who are all talking about being like, yeah, I have learned that, I actually do want to go to work with a mediator, or I do want to seek peace, or I do want to work with a therapist. Even people who are business partners, I'm hearing, are going to therapy, or, partners are opting to come and get like a relationship astrology reading. Libra can be that third party that doesn't have to intervene. They can be like the mediator, or they can kind of help you guys understand each other better. So I like that for Libra season. I think a lot of people are going to be kind of coming around to that a little bit more. I think a lot of it's going to be some of the pre-shadow in Scorpio as well, where we have to really get everything out in the open to like truly trust other people and be transparent and vulnerable to really be a part of like a lasting union. So with this new moon, I think intentions revolving around obviously Libra things are going to be a huge theme. And there's a lot of transformative energy that's still lingering. Okay. Sometimes Libra full moons, because they're coming off of the full moon in Aries 2 weeks prior, the new moon is like, okay, we both had this realization about the roles that we play in partnerships and relationships, and like whether or not we're in sync. And then you come to the new moon, and for a lot of people, it can just flush out a lot of stuff with relationships. So it's transformative. Obviously, it can reveal imbalances in relationships where people are actually opting to be like, actually, I'm going in a different direction. Some people would say that a Libra full moon is perfect for, manifesting love, relationships, marriage, right? Justice. This can be good for legal matters as well. It really depends on where, certain planets are in your chart. So stay tuned for that. We'll do a new moon in Libra video soon. But I will tell you guys that with Venus, the ruler of this moon, being in her home sign, it does make me feel better about some of the other effects that come up in the chart. Venus being there, she's behind the new moon, so it does talk about soulmates, karmic relationships, lasting reunions, and rituals revolving around love and manifestation of love and relationships and partnerships. But also it can talk a little bit about the things that are going on behind the scenes in relationships that can either help us or it can hinder us. We do see that Mercury-Mars conjunction very fiercely in the sky. And this is both coming into a square with Pluto, because it's only a couple degrees away. And it's also starting to come into an inconjunct with Uranus, as well as an inconjunct with Saturn. So believe it or not, this Libra new moon is a focal point to a yod between Uranus and also Saturn and Neptune. So it's kind of saying like, we actually need balance, diplomacy, harmony. We need mediation. We need to meet other people in the middle. We need to keep an open mind. We need to be willing to see a different perspective. We don't have to always agree, but we have to be respectful. And that might be enough to kind of wake up the collective from some of this like sleepwalking we've been doing with Saturn and Neptune, that we don't have to actually go at things alone. We can work together. And maybe our differences can actually be beneficial in helping build bridges rather than building walls. And then the finale here for me is that it's in opposition to Chiron, so it's mirroring some of the themes that we saw throughout, the eclipses that we've seen in Libra and Aries, where there's been some, unwillingness to heal ourselves, thus relationship fallout in recent years, particularly this spring in 2025, earlier this year. And it's also coming into a square with Jupiter. So my God, this is a new moon that's making aspects to quite literally everything. There is nothing it's not making aspects to other than Mercury and Mars, which I'm okay with, and the South Node, which I'm okay with, but it's making contact one way or another with everything else. Very interesting. 28, 29 degrees of Libra, the tipping of the scales, right? I don't even remember the Sabian symbol for it, but for me, that's always been like this is the defining moment, the turning point in the relationship. So it can be setting forth what can be like a 6-month kind of window that's like, all right, we're going to see whether or not we're going to be able to make it work in this area of our life. All right, and then we're going to see, with this new moon, that I think it's going to be refreshing a lot of, not just relationships, but we're going to feel a little bit more like renewed and refreshed as we're getting ready to then head into what will be Scorpio season pretty soon. So this will take us into the 22nd. And on the 22nd, we're going to see Neptune is going to retrograde back into Pisces. I keep calling this clown world. I mean, I don't know about you guys. It really depends on where you have it in your chart. If you're a water sign, maybe you're dealing with this a little bit better. I mean, at the very least, if there's anything that we're going to get from the end of October going into November, is you're going to see quite a few planets that are linking up, that are forming trines. We're going to see water trines, like Mars is going to start trining Jupiter. Mercury is going to be trining Jupiter. They're both going to be trining Saturn and Neptune. So for some of us, we're going to feel we are checked in, like our spidey senses are on fire. We are feeling like we're open to transparency and exposure. We want to get to the bottom of issues. We're ready for change. For other people, this many water trines can feel very overwhelming. Some people feel like emotionally they're like kind of drowning. So it depends on what you got going on in your chart, but Neptune is now back in Pisces. So, it has been in Aries for the last couple of months, both Saturn and Neptune, which I think has been a rude awakening for a lot of people. But I actually feel like it's gone a lot better for the collective than I anticipated. When we have these planets in Pisces, particularly Neptune, because it's at home there, we're asleep. Right? We're asleep, or we feel lethargic, or we don't want to look at the problems, or we just want to make too many sacrifices, or we want to stay in our own self-undoing habits. And Saturn in the North Node is there. So it can really kind of bring up collectively, like there is a lot of confusion. There is a lot of misinformation. There is a lot of manipulation. And everything from what we're, consuming to what we're watching to what we're believing in can feel like a big kind of clouded mess. That's very much Neptune. And Saturn is trying to bring structure and is trying to dissolve some of the mass confusion, or I think some of the kind of spiritual warfare that's been going on. Now, Neptune's been dipping into Aries. It will come back into Aries in early 2026, and Saturn and Neptune will both be moving into that sign next year. So I look at this period as like a closing of a chapter. So this could literally mean, dreams, spirituality, and intuition deepen. I think that's the positive side of this, especially with Jupiter trine, Mercury, Mars kind of trining. But illusions or escapism might actually start to surface. And so what you want to watch is that, this is more or less a collective wrap up on, empathy and boundaries. Okay. And I keep referring to it as like suicidal empathy, where we're giving too much, we're doing too much at the cost of our sanity, our, personal boundaries, our health, our ability also to stay connected. And it's kind of hard because Pisces represents like the whole collective, the whole planet. So whether that's the global economies or, we've also seen things that have been kind of connected to immigration and things that have been associated with mental health issues. And so some of the stuff is going to be kind of highlighted for the next couple of months. I will probably do a video specifically on this. Go back in my channel. You guys can see other transits where I did previewing Saturn in, in Aries, and I talk about kind of the transition. And I also talk about the Saturn-Neptune conjunction that's kind of building next year. I think that there can be heightened sensitivity and creative inspiration. So to best work with that, enhance spiritual practices, like if you're doing dream journaling, if you're doing meditation, if you guys are doing hypnosis, you're doing past life regression. These are great things to do while we have these planets and these signs. What you want to watch out for is feeling like you're getting slimed, when you're kind of going to work, when you're going out and about, because the crazy is going to be real, okay? Grounding yourself out by being in nature. I would really recommend soaking, saunas. I would recommend foot reflexology, lymphatic massage, sea salt baths, wearing fluorite, wearing aquamarine, things that are going to help kind of clear that out. Shungite can be really helpful as well. Smoky quartz, things that are going to keep you grounded, but also filter out some of the crazy. Because mental health, addiction, psychological stuff, lots of themes revolving around immigration and also kind of cultural, like religious divide is going to come up when we have planets back in these signs. So, I think the positive is that these two planets retrograding back into Pisces, it does soften October's edge and it brings the opportunity for inspiration and mysticism. But it's also showing us where there can be a lot more separation and a lot more polarity and things that are very crazy. And obviously, Pisces is traditionally ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter is in its exaltation in Cancer. So you're going to see people get really emotionally worked up over the country they live in, their culture, their roots, where they come from. You're going to see also a lot of wanting to talk about and addressing the past. And I speculate that some of this like Mercury-Mars stuff that's going to be going through Scorpio, which is kind of trining the third week of the month, is about information pertaining to this. And it's going to be about news and information pertaining to what we have all been told collectively about our history, human history, but also the history of our cultural roots and everything from, our heritage to our traditions to also, I think, things relating to war and stuff that's kind of connecting to, boundaries and borders and culture and religion. Saturn and Neptune, I think, back in Pisces is really confusing a lot of us, and a lot of us are kind of believing the storylines of what we've been told, and I think we're about to realize that there's like a lot more than what meets the eye. So I'll talk about that in a future video. Just know that it gets a little hectic with that. I think the positive is maybe, from the 22nd, you're going to see, Mercury forming a trine to Jupiter and also forming a trine to Saturn and Neptune. So good divination days, good planning days, good research days, good news days. And then Mars is also going to start coming into a trine with Jupiter, which is going to give us a great deal of like oomph. And all of this is also trining Saturn. And this is the reason why I'm not really freaked out about the Mercury retrograde in Scorpio, because I think the fact that Mercury is going to retrograde back into the sign and trine Jupiter, we can have better insight, more wisdom, better kind of foresight also when it comes to investments, particularly with the housing market. Jupiter in Cancer is about that. And then the trines to Saturn and Neptune is about using our gut or intuition and kind of like making financial moves or physical moves or home and family changes very strategically. Now, that'll be happening pretty much the 22nd all the way until around about the 28th, and then we kind of start to lose that. But you will see Mars in Scorpio also start kind of coming into a trine with Saturn. So much energy at the end of October. I really feel like we're going to have so much more confidence and we're going to feel so much more capable of having lasting change with Mars trine Saturn and Neptune. And Mars trine Jupiter, we're going to have a lot of stamina. So that's going to be good as well. Now, wrapping up, I think the other things that we're going to want to watch for is the 22nd. So I'm going to go back here for a second. So on the 22nd, the sun's going to go into Scorpio. This is going to kick off Scorpio season. And obviously in true Scorpio nature, Scorpio season is going to start, on the, looks like the 22nd or 23rd, depending on where you live, with the sun in Scorpio, the moon in Scorpio, Mars in Scorpio, Mercury in Scorpio. And no, this is not a new moon because the new moon was actually in Libra. So we're not going to get the Scorpio new moon until down the road. My God, Mars is in its home sign and the sun is coming into a square with Pluto. The 23rd is intense. This is like baptism by fire. And now this is all a superior square, a closing square to Pluto. This is like purging all the gunk and bringing it up. And it's going to be now up for the public debate. And we're going to see public reactions with Pluto and Aquarius. That's now awake, by the way. Scorpio season and Pluto's direct. Guys, have you been paying attention to what's going on in the news? Mercury is about systems. It's about IDs, communication, and travel. It's about analytics and data. Mars is going to be about swift action and hostility or anger or power and control. And obviously, Scorpio deals with things that are private, transactions that are private, what you're spending your money on, where you're traveling, private sensitive information that could be connected to your health. You guys can connect the dots with what I'm saying, but we're seeing a movement that's kind of going on in select countries globally where there is a futuristic kind of turn in regards to data and information and IDs. And so I would assume over the next month or so, as these planets all square Pluto and then we see Mercury retrograde, people are going to start waking up going, wait a second, what do you mean they're going to immediately take taxes out of my account when I make a purchase? Or if I send my grandson, money for their birthday, they're going to immediately be taxed on it. What do you mean I'm not going to have privacy for purchasing and everything is going to be tracked and logged? Pay attention. I love the fact that it's all squaring Pluto because I think it's going to shock some people. I love also that we can back up some of the stuff that people are going to be bringing online that are going to be talking about, the corrupted kind of darker side of this, of the power and control, and how it's preparation for, some of these trines with Saturn and Neptune to do it while people are distracted or they're under the influence, they're not paying attention. But Scorpio season kicks off with a bang. So that solar shift is intensifying everything. So it's going to bring more passion. It's going to be more mystery, more transformation. Obviously, the squares to Pluto is going to be kind of waking people up. And our vitality turns inward when we go into Scorpio season. Here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're kind of in the middle of fall. So we are shedding old skin. We're focusing on intimacy and rebirth. And it's a time really for embracing power in the Scorpio area of our chart. So to work with this, it's about really doing the shadow work, right? Doing the deep dive into the things that we don't want to deal with, the monsters under the bed or in the closet, and becoming very passionate about some of our pursuits, because this ingress is really deepening the themes of now rebirth as we are emerging into Scorpio season. Now, you guys will see then on the 29th. My goodness, I can't wait to see what happens at the 23rd to like the 27th. But then you guys will see on the 29th, we are now wrapping up with the last kind of big transit. And this is going to be when Mercury goes into the sign of Sagittarius with a bang. This is going to be fun. I've been looking at this Mercury retrograde all year. So Mercury going into Sag, obviously, the positive is that communication becomes very Jupiterian-like, right? Sagittarius, ninth sign, mutable fire, optimistic, philosophical, culture, travel, beliefs, and kind of the bigger picture. But it can embellish things. There could be tall tales. It can also mean that we don't have all of our facts straight because we're kind of too focused on the bigger thing. We're not able to look at the nitty-gritty. And so it's shifting communication to some of these Sagittarius topics: higher education, travel, international relationships, major court battles and messages about things that are going on in the court systems or perhaps with the Supreme Court. And it's going to be a time where we're really focusing on exploring or learning or sharing new wisdom. I could see where some people are going to be wanting to travel. Obviously, now we're in the end of October, coming into November. So November, December, January, lots of holidays are kind of coming up. While Mercury is in shadow, while it's making this opposition to Uranus, which it will make several times, not a good time to be scheduling holiday travel. So if you're having to travel towards the end of October, beginning of November, there could be a lot of turbulence in the pre-shadow. There could also be a lot of turbulence because Mercury is going to oppose Uranus and Gemini. Now, what you're going to start hearing, because Jupiter is connecting to this, is that there's going to be new news that are coming out of certain countries revolving around their passport, visas, immigration, and kind of travel-related things. And I'm already hearing it. You are hearing now that you go to some parts of Europe, even as a United States citizen, and they're taking biometric data to go in and out of parts of Europe. okay? But we're not always necessarily doing that here. And just full disclosure, you guys can generally, at least here in the States, you can decline that if you decide not to. It is not required. They'll tell you to take your picture, but you don't have to do that. But I think we're going to hear some shocking news revolving around new laws or regulations revolving around where we can go, how we can travel, how travel is somehow being impacted or affected. It could also be, some decisions that are being made in regards to immigration or like birthright citizenship in some countries. And I think that it's kind of crazy because Mercury in Sag is known for its blunt honesty. And so after going through kind of Scorpio land, it's bringing the adventure, but also potential, foot in your mouth kind of moments. So yes, share new information and wisdom, but keep in mind, Mercury is in a sign it doesn't do well in. It's also in shadow. And right off the bat, it's going to come into an opposition with Uranus and Gemini. So we are going to see, yes, there will be disruptions. There's probably going to be some flight disruptions or travel disruptions, or some big news that's emerging about institutions, higher institutions, colleges, big court decisions. And this is where innovative thinking is kind of clashing with unpredictability and like people not having their facts or their figures or their stories straight. So we will see breakthroughs in how we're thinking, but I do think we're going to see some tech glitches and some shocking news. I think this is about staying flexible, embrace the unexpected as growth. Thankfully, that Mercury, I think is in a sextile to Pluto. So when people start to kind of realize, there could be some groundbreaking court decisions and things that are being made, or there could be some campaigns that are kind of happening to try to like wake people up, make them realize what's going on in the world. It could set the stage for, I think, a lot of other countries and nations waking up. I think it could also kind of translate to there being some really jaw-dropping kind of court decisions. And obviously Mercury is connected to Uranus, right? And then Uranus is also connected to Pluto, which it is trining. So we see a lot of aspects here that's saying if we start to watch some of the global themes as Mercury goes into Sagittarius, opposing Uranus, revolving around travel, revolving around IDs, revolving around court, battles and decisions, we're going to start to see where countries are going to kind of start to split. We're going to see some that are going to go in the direction of being like, no, we want to maintain freedom, while others are going to say, no, there's new technological developments. We want to make changes revolving around immigration. I'm just going off of what I'm hearing out of the UK. I'm an American, but, hearing the prime minister out there say things like, well, you need to have this if you want to work, or, it's going to help preserve jobs, and like limit immigration. Why couldn't you guys do that before? Why do you need a new system to do that? Just practicing some critical thinking. Because we're not going to have all of the news, and it's not going to be crystal clear, I think, until we're getting closer into November as Mercury goes back into Scorpio and it starts trining Saturn and Neptune and also Jupiter. And I think that we need to be exercising critical thinking and asking questions about kind of the domino effect of what starts happening if we do start kind of controlling or, creating these boundaries revolving around freedom, and whether that's how that's going to be impacting what we can say on the internet, how that's going to be impacting us potentially legally, how that's going to be impacting our travel. The list goes on. So, you don't even need to be a conspiracy theorist for this stuff anymore. I mean, you could literally go on the UN website. You can go and see what the whole plan is to kind of implement this between now and 2030, and all of the different systems that are going to now be connected to this. And once you're in it, you're in it. How do you get out of it? Right? I don't know. I welcome your guys' feedback, but that's about as much as I can say on YouTube. So I think in closing, because now would be a good time to wrap this up, is that October is an amazing opportunity to really connect deeply, while also honoring your sovereignty. And this is about kind of transforming some of the last month's challenges into empowerment, and like letting those kind of benefic planets, Venus, Jupiter, do their thing, bringing you guys some abundance. Obviously, it's going to be different depending on your personal chart. So definitely check out those October horoscopes for the rising signs. Obviously, if you guys want more insight, if you want to book a personal reading with me, I'm now booking in 2026. So if you know that you want to get a reading either in December, January, February, I highly recommend checking out my schedule. Click the links below and head over to my website at beyondtheveiltarot.com. While you guys are there, please sign up for my newsletter. I'm going to be putting out all kinds of new products in the next couple of months as we're getting closer to the holidays. My 2026 astro calendars and some other goodies I'm going to be putting out there. We also generally do sales on my courses. So if you've been wanting to learn tarot or astrology, I'd love to be your teacher. Stay tuned for that. We'll be letting you guys know through the email blast when we're having specials and deals on that stuff. And thanks again so much for watching my video, for supporting my content, for joining my memberships. We have so many members now, it's crazy. Those of you guys who didn't know, if you get in on any level of my memberships, you're gonna get early access to my videos. And now I'm thinking about creating even more content because we've had such a boost in people who just want to join my membership. So I think I'm going to start creating some like weekly vlogs or something for you guys who just want to kind of have some back and forth with me, less kind of cerebral, more personal stuff, and kind of talk about my thoughts on what's going on in the world, or how I'm seeing transits play out, or just some stuff with me, because I have some stuff that I'm kind of working on that I want to share with you guys. So please consider joining my memberships. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And for everything on me, check out the links below at beyondtheveiltarot.com. I hope October is an awesome month for you guys. I hope this resonates. Definitely circle back and let me know. And I'll catch you guys back here on Thursday for Tarot Scopes. Until next time, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. I'll see all of you guys very soon. Take care.